Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Let's Overbuild Some Shit for My Wife. My wife has sent me another picture, and I'm going to overbuild it. You can see behind me, we are going to make some hanging planter boxes today. She did not want to spend the money on cedar, so we used some pallet wood, and, well, let's just go ahead and get into the build. This is what you're going to need. So everything that I'm using today has been milled to 3/4 stock. So while I go ahead and mill this up, let's go down the list of everything you're going to need. We're going to start out with 8 2x19 inch 3/4 stock. Now, these are going to be the legs. I'm using 3/4, but most of these videos you see everybody using fence pickets. Those are usually 5/8 by 5.5. I figured it up, and to do a build like this, you're probably going to need between 8 to 10 of these. But I'm using pallet wood because my wife doesn't want to spend the $70 for the fence pickets. It's a little cheaper for me, and I have lots of pallet wood in my shop at the moment. Once we get the legs done, then we're going to need 6 20.5 by 5 3/8 and 6 21.25 by 5 3/8. The reason I went with 5 3/8 is because my pallet wood right now is sitting right at 5.5 inches. Once I get it milled down, it comes in at 5 3/8. So once you have those 3 sets milled up, then we can start the assembly normally. But we're going to overdo this. I am going to put a chamfer on my legs. And I'm going to put a chamfer down the sides of my legs. Because I want this to be just a little bit fancier than your normal cedar fence pickets. Once we have all the chamfers in place, I'm going to go ahead and stain these legs with a black stain. And I'm going to paint the panels with this barn red paint I have left over from my fence. Why am I going to do this? Well, because I'm using pallet wood. It's pine pallet wood, and it may very well look great. Just a natural polyurethane coating on it. But I want to be a little more fancy than all your other cedar fence picket planters out there. So we are going to paint them and stain them and chamfer the shit out of them, because that's what I like to do. Anyways, now that we have all the chamfers and all the paints and all the stains put on it, we can go ahead and start the assembly of these things. Now, most videos you watch, glue and brad nails are plenty. There are no problems, and they say they hold up just fine. Well, I'm kind of questionable on that whole just brad nails and glue thing, because my drawers were all brad nailed together and they were garbage. But, you know, we move on. So I'm gonna put these pan head screws in. They're 1.5 inches. You will need 105 of those. So they come 50 in a pack, so you might want to just go ahead and buy 3 packs of them. You could probably get away with 1.25 inches, but like I said, I like to overbuild stuff, so I'm using 1.5 inches. Alright, so what I do is I take my legs and I put them together with a couple of brad nails first. And then I put my screws in right beside the brad nails to kind of hide the brad nails. The brad nails are there just to hold it together. You know, just to keep it from moving around while I put the screws in. Once I got the screws in, we can clean up all the squeeze out, or if any squeeze out. And then we can go ahead and stain them. Now, I know I mentioned staining them earlier, but I wanted to wait until they were all screwed together to stain them. That way all the cracks were filled and I don't have any wood showing through. When doing your legs, you only want to put the chamfer all the way around on half of them. The other half, you only want to put the chamfer on the one side. That way, when they meet flush. If you put them on all four sides, you're going to have a chamfer right there in the center. So you don't want to do that. Now that I have everything stained and painted, everything is dry, we can go ahead and start assembly. I've laid down 2 cauls. The cauls are cut at 24 inches because I want my planter boxes to be 24 by 24. What I do is I take the 22.5-inch boards. These have chamfers on them. 2 of these boards have chamfers on only one side. I want the chamfers all toward the middle. The other board has chamfers on both sides. That's obviously the middle board. So with the chamfers together, I can line everything up and start screwing it down. I put a bead of glue in. That's why I left the edges of these 22.5-inch boards unpainted. That way the glue adheres really tightly. With the glue and screws, this thing ain't going nowhere. It's like bomb-proof. Now that you have 4 sides completed, we can start assembling them all together. So you take your sides like so. You get your shorter boards, which are now 20.5. And we're going to go ahead and start lining these up. And it's just rinse and repeat. You want your flat edge at the top, your beveled edge at the bottom. Same deal, we're going to glue them. I'm going to go ahead and use a brush because I had a little bit of problem with the squeeze out on the other ones. Beveled side down. Line it up. Squeeze it together there a little bit. And run them screws. I'm going to put one in. I'm going to put 2 in. Double check. We'll go ahead and put the center and the top on. So while I run these screws in, let me tell you all about these measurements. Alright, I'm using 3/4 material. If y'all are using fence pickets, you're going to have to add a little bit to your boards because your fence pickets are only 5/8. So these measurements that I'm giving you today are not going to line up with fence pickets. Only 3/4 material. The reason I didn't go with the fence pickets obviously is because of the cost. Not to mention I'd already had a bunch of material here in the shop. See, I am already into this project for about $80. And that is for 2 planters. That is the 4 hangers and the 2 posts and the screws and brads that go into this project. And $70 just didn't seem right. So, you should have a pretty sexy looking planter box by this point. freaking sexy, boys. Sexy. Now, we gotta do the bottom. So we're gonna set this off to the side for now, and I'm gonna finish the other one. Yeah. So with the bottoms all done, now it's time to get some more painting done. With daylight running out and my day coming to an end, I wanted to get as much painted, that way it could dry while I went to work. So I cut these 24 by 2-inch pieces and put a miter on either end. And of course, we're going to put the bevel on those as well, on the inside and the outside. That way we get a nice smooth transition to the inside of the planter box. Now these posts that I bought, they came from Lowe's, and we all know how Lowe's wood is. These things are extremely bowed, like a 1/4 inch from one end to the other. I mean, the dip in the middle is just absolutely terrible. I'd attempted to put them on a joiner, but I was going to have to take way too much off. So I just decided to kind of roll with it, I guess. So once my posts were dry, then we could start assembling. Now, I didn't think y'all wanted to watch paint dry, but as you can see, red on the bottom, black on the top. I had to do it in 2 different days because I had to let it dry so I could mask it off. We needed to cut some 2x4s to hold these posts upright. And I used 2 of the 2x4s that I had taken out of my ceiling and gotten from some pallets. We got those cut down and cleaned up on the joiner, the planer, the table saw, you know, same as everything else. And then what we're going to do is we are going to mount these to the posts at 8 inches from the bottom. Why 8 inches from the bottom? Because I plan on putting some pretty big planters on here, and I don't want them falling over. So 8 inches from the bottom is what it is. And then we are going to screw them in from the sides. But before I do that, I want to mark out where my screw holes are going to be. So we're going to set them down inside of the planter boxes and draw a line around the 2x4s and around the bottom of the posts, because I'm not going to leave the bottom of that post unsupported. Once we got the 2.5-inch screws screwed into the side of the planter, then we can go ahead and lay the planter down and run these 3.5-inch lag bolts right through the bottom into the bottom of that post. This post ain't going nowhere. You may be thinking 3.5-inch lag screws, 4 2.5-inch screws into 2 2x4s is a little excessive. Well, when I set a pole, I want it strong enough my wife can dance on. Now, I know my wife's not going to dance on this pole, but she can if she wants to. Once the post is set, we can go ahead and move on to the trim. Now the trim is real simple. I just set it up there in place. I shoot 2 brads on either end of each piece, and then I run 3 of these 1.5-inch pan head screws right through the top. You'll never even notice these screws. It's on a planter. who looks at screws on a plant? But if you do, they look good because the brass on the black, man, you can't beat it. It's good looking stuff. And just like the legs, I'm going to run the pan head screws real close to the brad nails. That way the pan heads cover up the brad nails and you don't see them. Because nobody wants to see all those brad nails. Once your trim's all finished up, you can put your hangers on. Now, putting the hangers on is real simple. You put your hanger where you want it, mark out your locations for your screws, you pre-drill. That way you're not fumbling around with your screws trying to hold on to them. You run your screws in and you're all done. And just like that, we're done. We have a pole and a planter. We got 2 of them. My wife can hang 4 hanging plants. I got the absolute cheapest hangers that Lowe's had to offer at 12 inches. And they look great. Now, it's February here in North Carolina, so it's rather cold and a little early to plant. So as soon as we get plants in these things and some hanging plants up here, we will post some updates. Well, that is all I have for y'all today. So get in your shop, make something, and hit that like and subscribe button. Really helps me out. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Alright, I'll see y'all later.